Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. A very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. So Godzilla King of the Monsters has brought in 148 million globally this weekend, and the post-mortem has already started. Midnight's Edge has already done one of those investigative videos, really important, finding out all the problems with the film. The film doesn't have any problems, right? First problem, right? The critics decided to vote this film down because apparently it doesn't have any character development. It does. But this is a monster movie. This film was made for monster movie fans. But here's the big thing. There isn't as big a call for monster movies as there is for superheroes. This film was never going to clear 200 million over the first weekend. Never going to happen. It wasn't going to hit big. And this is a tough part of the year because people are still going to see Avengers Endgame. It's nuts. That's where all the money is still. It's crazy. In fact, I would dare to say Godzilla King of the Monsters has done well considering that fucking film is still in the cinemas because that film is still taking a big chunk of the box office. So it's really problematic. What I would have done, I wouldn't have released any big films until the second part of the year. I know it would be difficult and there's other pieces of competition, but I don't think, the only film really you've got to be wary about, and I think it's next month, isn't it, or this month, end of this month, is Spider-Man Far From Home. Avoid that film, which is not going to be the big hit that Endgame was. Of course it's going to make about $1 billion globally. You get over it and then you move on. But I think Avengers Endgame has been such a mammoth hit, even now. I mean, you just think about how close Shazam released to the release of Endgame, and we know it hurt it. We know it shouldn't have been released then. And if they actually released it totally far away from that film, I think it would have made at least 500-600 million. It's a really, really good film. But so is Godzilla King of the Monsters. And again, we're looking at 148 million opening weekend. I think China will save this film. I think that the China box office can take this film to a final global box office of 500 million. That is very, very respectable. And if it can do that, it's done fantastically well. I really do believe there's going to be a lot of repeat viewings. I think, especially in China, people will support this film. You know, Godzilla, King Kong, these kind of films are loved over there. So even though, I don't know what people expected from this film. I don't know what kind of box office you thought a monster movie was going to make. I suppose you could compare it to other Godzilla movies and say it didn't reach as high as that did. But as I say, that's down to being, having Avengers Endgame there. I know, you can't really blame the studio for releasing Godzilla King of the Monsters now because you wouldn't think Endgame would be taking such a big chunk of the box office pie. But it is. But the way people are acting, do I think this is a disastrous box office? No, I don't think this is a disastrous box office. But I do have to question the critics and I have to ask them, are you a legitimate source where people should be seeking advice whether to go and see a film or not? If you vote a film down, if you vote a monster movie down, you spin heads because there's no character development. But you know what? There were brilliant performances. It's a brilliant cast, right? It really is. We've got Stranger Things girls. We've got Charles Dance. We've got Vera Farmiga, one of the great actors. The thing is with the cast in this film, they're pretty much TV actors. That's purposely done with this type of film so they can spend more money on the visuals than the actual film because obviously all those guys and girls would have been a lot cheaper than getting proper movie actors, and that's why it was done. And that's why Shazam did the same thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. As a spectacle, as a monster movie, this is one of the best movies you're ever going to see. There's so much enjoyment. At the end of the day, if you're a critic and you're saying, I don't like this film because of the lack of character development, even though I feel there was character development, you have to ask yourself a question. Am I a critic for the right reason? Am I doing films down for the right reason? Am I trying to stop this film from making money, so Endgame? You see, and this is another theory as well of mine, is kind of Did these critics vote it down so Endgame could cross the line and beat Avatar so it could be the most profitable movie of all time? I think that's another thing we have to consider. These critics, these pundits, are extremely corrupt. Not only are these scoopers coming up with bullshit all throughout the year, but when they talk about films, there's an agenda. And there's a lot of punditry, there's a lot of critics who are desperate to come out and say, breaking news, Avengers Endgame beats Avatar's total haul. It's the most successful movie of all time. That's what they're desperate to report. So of course they're going to mark Godzilla King of the Monsters down, because you shouldn't be marking this film down, because it's a bloody good film. And we all know that. But they voted it down. That didn't help the box office. But this film was never going to break records. This film was never going to make 700-800 to $1 billion. Never. Never. So all this about a disastrous box office, it's not disastrous. It's a solid opening weekend. And you can expect nothing else from movies that are not superhero movies. This is the era we're living in. This is the problematic situation now. The mainstream audience are floating in for superhero movies. And I know you say that Shazam doesn't support that. No, they won't go and this is the other thing, they won't go in their droves to watch anything. They will go, look, definitely, I mean, for Ant-Man did okay, Ant-Man and the Wasp did okay, but people didn't go in their droves, didn't make the type of money that Spider-Man Homecoming did and other kind of solo movies did, like Iron Man 3. You say what you want about the movie, but it made a hell of a lot of money off the back of the first Avengers, obviously. But they will go for big tentpole superhero movies in their droves. And this is why studios are going that direction. It's very sad that we live in an era where a variety of films can't make as much money and galvanise an audience like kind of generic superhero films do. But that's the era we live in. Don't misunderstand me. I love superhero movies, but I just wish there was a piece of the pie for everyone. So in closing, my opinion is that Godzilla King of the Monsters wasn't a flop, but the media are jumping on it because there's not much to talk about right now, apart from the Batman. So they're trying to create this big stink. But 148 million globally isn't bad. And China will push this film to 500 million, which at the end of the day is really, really good for a film of this level and budget. Thank you very much.